Hey friends, I'm Mars Gelfo, host of the Holistic Horn podcast and founder at High Range Magic. Today we are joined by legendary hornist and educator Elizabeth Freimuth. She spent 19 years as principal horn of the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and Pops and is the newly appointed professor of horn at Rice University, one of the most prestigious horn programs in the world. This episode is packed. Liz shows us how fundamentals become freedom when you know why you practice, how character and color turn notes into stories, and how to channel your full emotional range into music that heals. We talk about real mentorship, what inclusion means in today's day and age, and many paths to a thriving career. Spoiler alert, you don't need to be an excerpt jockey to have a career or have a really great time with the horn these days. You're going to hear an absolutely magical, unforgettable story about her time with Vern Reynolds at Eastman, a vision of Strauss' Second Horn Concerto as a hilarious mini opera, and a reminder I love and should probably put on a billboard. It may be messy, but it's possible. If you're ready to think deeper, feel wider, and play with more purpose, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. You've been principal horn at Cincinnati Orchestra and Cincinnati Pops for 19 years. You are now the new professor of horn at Rice University. You've played all over the world with orchestras, taught, you're at Aspen Music Festival. I am delighted to have you on the Holistic Horn podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to know you and to have this chance to have a conversation.
I'm excited because you are a really experienced horn player, both as a performer and as an educator. And there's this overlap and synergy between the two that I'm really eager to explore. But my first question for you is, do you remember your first orchestral horn solo and what did it feel like?
Yes. Yes. My first orchestral horn solo was in the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was Debussy's Afternoon of the Faun. And so there's no major solo there, but there's some exposed stuff. It was actually my first experience playing with strings. And when I say how I felt, it was, I just felt that the beauty of that elaborate color, that palette, that, and it was my first time playing French music. And I'll be honest, I was surprised that I was able to do it. I remember feeling like, oh, I can do this. It wasn't so hard. And I think before that, I had thought that playing in an orchestra was a dream, but it would require me to be different than I was at that time, better than I was at that time. And having that opportunity, I remember thinking, I can do this. And I loved it. But it wasn't
Were you
like
nervous?
I'm sure I was. I don't remember feeling so nervous. My self-talk was actually quite positive. And I remember that. I think I was just so taken by the experience of playing with all of these instruments I had never played with before. And I thought that that was something for like professionals. The Pittsburgh Youth Symphony at that time was mostly college students. And so I was the only high school student in that horn section. And so I guess I just looked at it as something that was for people that were more experienced than me. And so I remember just feeling really inspired and wanting to do more of it.
What was it like coming to the horn? Did you pick it up and the long call came out, or, dying cow sounds, or nothing at all? Like Excalibur from the stone. Oh.
Yeah, no. So my dad was my band director in high school, and I'd love to tell a story that sounds like, oh, I heard a horn and I loved the sound of it and I just thought I have to play that instrument, but that's not really my truth. Um, I did hear horns on recordings, and I know that we went to live performances and the horn was always pointed out to me. But when it came time for me to pick an instrument, a horn showed up in my bedroom at home. And I think the truth of the matter is that my dad knew that if I played the horn, he would have control over guaranteeing himself like one decent horn player in so many years. That was really how it all began. I do remember playing a few notes in like a one of those instrument petting zoo things. And I remember the the people that had the horns, they were like, I played a note. I think it came out pretty, naturally, just like a note. And they jumped on this thing like, oh, you're definitely cut out to play. You should play the horn. Your tooth structure's just right. It must be really, really good. So they appealed to um, you know, uh some kind of thing in me that thought, oh, I'm unique. Like not just anybody can play this instrument. I have the right. I guess I have to. My dad was my first teacher, and we worked on out of that Paris Scales book, um, and some very basic, I think, Patek and Hovey stuff, and then we started with Mozart one, Mozart's first horn concerto, because that seemed to be a good place to start, and that was really how I learned to play the horn.
And how old were you when what
I
your
was
first
in,
notes were at age?
I was 10.
Got it.
So, yeah. Yeah, they start in 4th grade in Pennsylvania, and, so I was, like, 9-ish and 10. Um, I didn't start in 4th grade with the beginner band. My dad just started me at home, and so I joined the 5th grade band the next year, having played
I
Mozart
have
1.
this. Oh, amazing. Wow. I have this hunch. In linguistics, they talk about something called the language acquisition window. There's this concept in linguistics that as you grow up, there's this window that kind of closes around 10 or 11, before which you can become completely fluent in a language, and after which it's very difficult slash nearly impossible to become truly fluent in a language. I started piano when I was 5, and I started horn when I was about 12.
Mhm.
And I, to this day, even though I've put in tens and tens of thousands of hours on the horn, when I sit at a piano, there's something about it that feels more like a native language to me than the
Wow.
horn.
Wow.
And I wonder, sounds like you started just before the closure of that
Yeah.
window at which something just becomes completely native to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I started piano when I was about 5, but I never had that experience. It never gelled with feeling natural to me. I think the idea of doing 2 different things with 2 hands simultaneously and reading, such a wide staff, um, by the time I was playing the horn, it just seemed, I don't know, it just seemed really more natural to me. It was like a voice, a singular voice. But my undergraduate degrees were in music education and in performance at the Eastman School of Music. And when studying music ed, I remember very clearly in one of my classes being told that what you said is actually very, very true, that musical aptitude is all experiences that one has in their life relating to music in any way. It could just be, a baby being held on a lap and being sort of bopped to the beat, um, all the way to singing in choirs and playing instruments, but that you're exactly right that around that age of between 9 and 11, it starts to close. And so it's really important to have, musical experiences earlier in life to build your aptitude.
Yeah. And along with that, there's a concept called implicit practice, just like you're talking about, which is practice that you didn't necessarily yourself put in. And I think of Nathaniel Silverslog as a really good example of this because both of his parents, a lot of brass playing happening around him from the time he was in the womb.
Yeah.
And I swear that kid was like a virtuoso by the time he was 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Not a kid anymore, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of practice. 10,000 hours happened for Nathaniel, maybe before he even picked up a French horn for the first time.
Right. And that is really, it's powerful.
It sounds like you had that with music education.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always surrounded by music. My dad was a musician. He's a jazz trombone player. And so music was always a a part of our home, a part of my life. My brother, who's a couple years older, he also played the trombone, and I remember him learning how to improvise and um, the language, the jazz languages, and being very curious about that. But at the same time, I was learning how to play the horn, and my brother and his friend would put on Jamie Ambersol like records and they would play along improvisation, and I remember thinking, well, gosh, they can do that. What can I do that would be fun like that? And I put on Barry Tuckwell and played along with the Mozart concertos.
Do you improvise at all?
No, not really. I mean, building maybe a cadenza or something, but I do not fancy myself a jazz musician.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's one of those things. I respect the language and I can hear the language and I understand the language to hear it, but I can't speak it. At least yet.
Hmm.
It would take me time, and I've I still have time.
What
Yeah.
would you say is lighting you up in this current chapter of life?
This whole transition of my career is really um a profound thing that I am absolutely lit up about. Um
Mm,
for some years, I've become more and more aware of this piece of me that I knew very, very much that I would want the last significant chapter of my career to be mentorship. I just, the question was, what would it take? Where would it need to be? Like, what would that look like? And I have loved my performing career. I started in the Colorado Symphony, and then I was in Kansas City Symphony and in San Francisco Ballet Orchestra, and then I've been in Cincinnati for 19 years. So for 27 years, I've really enjoyed performing. And I've never fallen out of love with any moment ever on stage. And so it's not ever been about, oh, I'm not enjoying this anymore. What else can I do? But this voice in me that says, there's something else you need to do. As I've taught, I've realized that's exactly what it is, that I really want to do this. And so when the opportunity came, it was obvious. It's Rice
yeah.
is a school that I went to. It it means so much to me. Had I not been, I see so many things in my life as the reason why I've gotten to enjoy the career that I have. Nothing has been an accident. Every place I've been, every teacher I have had has been significant to get me to where I am. And I'm so grateful for all of that. And so it just felt really amazing for this opportunity to be at a place that I see as something that was so significant in my own success.
I really want to ask about your teaching in a moment, but what you just said sparked a curiosity. Do you believe in a benevolent universe or in the power of, coincidence, serendipity, magic, however you want to phrase it? What's your relationship with what's your metaphysics, in other words?
Yeah, I really believe that I believe we are ordained to do certain things. And there's there are different paths that people choose in life. And some of those experiences, one experiences more friction than others. And I don't think that that friction's bad. I think it's important for us to experience friction like that sometimes because it builds good grit in us. It
Yeah.
it puts some traction on our tires. But when we find another path that flows, I think there's a reason for that. It's just
Hmm.
the right one.
You said that every teacher and opportunity that you had was meant to be. Can we unpack that a little bit more? What does that mean to you that it was meant to be?
Well, it's all hindsight now. I mean, in those
Mm.
moments, I I would never have been auditioning for a teacher at a school thinking, "Oh, they need me just as much as I need them."
Right, right,
Right?
right.
I don't think that I ever really saw it that way, but, like, I remember very vividly, and this is very cute, but when, before I auditioned at the Eastman School of Music for undergrad, I was going to be auditioning for Vern Reynolds, and I envisioned this room with, like, a screen, and then I would just take my horn and I would play from behind my side of the screen, and they would surely be, like, chuckling on the other side of the screen, like, that was what I believed. I really believed that. When it turned out to be something so beautifully different from that, Vern Reynolds, was nothing like I had thought he would be. His reputation as being stern Vern and all of that, no, I went in the room and I played what I'd prepared, and then I had transcribed a a horn choir piece from a Sounds of Eastman tape that they had sent out as propaganda.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so, um, I just thought he might think it's funny or cute, and so I said, "I have one other piece for you, and here you can have the copy, the manuscript." And so I played this thing as solo horn, um, and I think he just loved that, I did that. And he went over to the piano and he said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "Turn away. What note am I playing here?" And he would play some notes on the piano, and I would tell him. And he said, "Okay, okay, great." Like, I'd love to stay in touch or something like that. And that was the end of my audition. He didn't tell me that that was unique or that it was special, that I knew what the notes were. I thought that was part of the gig. I thought if you know how to play the instrument, you know what notes they are when someone plays them. You hear the notes as the notes are. And later found out that was not actually, uh, an expectation or a typical thing. And but he was so great for me because he just let that be. And, as far as mentorship goes, when I went to school there, he just fostered those things and didn't point them out as extra special or in the same way it was like nothing was terrible and nothing was, you know, horribly unique. It was like, okay, this is something helpful for her. So I'll figure out a way to use that as part of how I'll encourage her to progress.
Love hearing about that as a pedagogical lens, and it makes me reflect as well how I could do a little bit more of that. What do you think a horn student really needs in today's world, not just to win a job, but to thrive?
So many things. So many things. I think a mentor is really important. Um, I recently watched a documentary on Liza Minnelli. Her mother died when she was about 23 years old, and these incredible people just seemed to come alongside of her at different times in her life, and she has had these mentors, and they weren't like teaching her the craft of how to be a star on the stage or how to be a great singer. They were more teaching her how to use her talents and how to live and how to navigate a career and navigate life
Hmm.
in a really sort of a safe way at that age. And you know, teaching these incredibly talented young musicians how to play the instrument better, how to, execute the excerpts at the standard that will give them employment is one thing. But there's so much more. There's so much more. It's not about just winning the audition and getting the job. Then you have to go through the probationary period. There's, relating with others. You know, there's so much. It's very intricate. And so to say what do they need the most, I think they need someone that can help them put this puzzle together because it's a very elaborate puzzle, right?
Yeah. And not only that, it's interesting hearing you talk about excerpts and mastering those in order to be able to win an audition and then in order to be able to pass the probationary period. I was thinking, but wait, we're in the 21st century. There's 1,000 times more jobs on French horn that aren't orchestral, where you never need to play an excerpt at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other thing is, there are different paths for different people.
Hmm.
You know, Here at the Shepherd School, it's very much an orchestral training ground.
Hmm.
This school in general for anybody that goes to school here, but you're right. It would be narrow-minded to limit ourselves to only those jobs.
Because if you think about the music industry and the size of the music industry and then the relative size of the classical music industry to the overall music industry, there's no reason that French horn couldn't be as used, loved, and yeah, in at a much broader scale in music. And then not only that, there's adjacencies around entertainment, not necessarily music, but entertainment,
Yeah.
and then education as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. I think that keeping students looking with a wide lens at their future is
Mm.
is really helpful. Just when a young person steps off of the graduation stage, it's like, okay, you're not a student anymore. So then what are you? You know, we're always students. We're students of
Yeah,
music always and forever. You're just not a student of that particular university anymore. But forever we're students of music, and we navigate our careers. If you don't like something, change it. You know, if
exactly. Personal
if
responsibility for our lives.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I have I have encountered numerous people where they get very far into this, and I think what they realize is that they're living someone else's dream for them. And maybe you're right. Maybe that playing in an orchestra is not the thing, and that they want to have a little bit more of a unique voice as a musician that happens to play the horn. I think helping people navigate those waters is really, it just intrigues me so much because I think that it's a really that takes vulnerability to admit this is what I want or this is what I don't want. And to have somebody tell you that's okay. It's okay,
Uh,
you know, and help you navigate finding your way in this.
yeah. There's kind of like two things. One is helping people figure out how do you operate this hunk of plumbing to make it sound good. And then the other is what do you do with it once you figured out how to operate it to some extent?
Right. And I think that that can be the bigger thing because if you don't really want the job, you know, grinding away these excerpts, it becomes too black and white, technically based, and it's you can get yourself into the finals, but you may not win
Yeah.
because you have to really want it. The passion matters. You have to really love doing that. Figuring out what is your passion. Playing the horn is just the voice that you've chosen, but the passion has to be in front of that.
Speaking of just helping people with horn playing in general, what would you say are some key components of commonalities in how you help people with horn playing issues?
Yeah. Fundamentals are everything. We never outgrow the need for improving our fundamentals, and I think it's important that we're always being realistic on where we are with that and what we can shift to, you know, recognize gaps in our playing. Because even at the highest level, things improve. Okay, then there's something else that needs to catch up with it. So no matter how far you go in this career as a technician on the instrument, there's always things that are better than others. And so being honest and realistic and looking at your playing and saying these are the deficiencies and these are the things that I'm, currently better at than this. And so I'm going to focus my fundamentals on those things. And over time that changes. And I think therefore our approach has to change as well. I'm not really big on any one fundamental system. But what I am really, really big about is no exercises will help you if you don't know why you're doing them,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Preach. Uh-huh.
And basically, any exercise will help you if you know why you're doing it.
Uh,
It's really that simple. You have to know this is not just about playing the harmonic series, but why am I doing this? What am I trying to get out of this? Just trying on lip trills over a course of time is only going to get you better at playing lip trills a certain amount. But if you have an understanding of what you're doing to make it better and having your focus on, what it takes for that improvement and understanding it's a system, there's a specific thing that is required, and what you're learning is less about the technique and more about how to think when you're playing.
could you give an example maybe from your own practice?
Yeah, like navigating through shifts. Let's say navigating through shifts. People like to get really hung up on I'm on my lower setting or upper setting or, all of that. But when you practice the harmonic series and you see the fluidity of all of that, well, you realize that that's just how one navigates the instrument. And then coming back even more from that, you can take your mouthpiece and you can buzz a big giant siren, and then you do that and very smoothly without any bumps or gaps, and you put the mouthpiece into the lead pipe
Uh,
and you do that same, but okay, you say, oh, that's the harmonic series, right? And it's not that we practice the harmonic series just so we're good at playing this order of notes, but we're actually recognizing that the efficiency, that's what it takes to do that. So that's just one small example of what I'm talking about. But,
Uh,
when I ask people, do you practice harmonic series? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, okay, show me what you do. And then they start sort of grabbing at notes and they're just, and I think that they're thinking about it as a flexibility study, which, yes, you will gain flexibility from doing that. But the bigger picture is to understand, why are we even acknowledging this thing? It's because it takes us to the basis of our efficiency system and in improving that.
yeah, beautiful.
Well, sorry for the interruption, but if you are a horn player and you struggle with high range, confidence, accuracy, consistency, or endurance, this is of interest to you. I am still running my program High Range Magic that has offered profound transformation to folks that want to unlock the high range and all of its benefits. There is a masterclass linked below that you can watch for free, 100% free, 3 Secrets of High Playing. After you watch the masterclass, you'll have an option to book a no-cost one-on-one consult with me if you're interested in finding out more about the program. That's all for now. Back to the episode.
And then once you've got that efficiency worked out, you're operating the instrument, what do you do as an educator to help people access emotional depth and storytelling without telling them what to feel or how things should go?
Well, I think that some people, musicality and storytelling comes a little bit more naturally than others,
Mm.
based on how comfortable they are with being vulnerable, or, you know, some people are a little bit more held just in general. And I think that something that can be helpful for them is just looking at, well, what was the composer's life at that time? What story do you think the composer was telling? So just getting them to think about storytelling through a lens that might not be so personal. And if you can get in the habit of seeing things as stories, might not be your story, but you have to be the storyteller of someone else's story, then it doesn't feel so vulnerable. Other people, they can play and they relate very personally to music, and they're telling their own stories, and that's also beautiful. However, I think that there are, various ways of getting people to see the story, understand the story, and acknowledge everything's about life experience. Composers wrote music based on life. Almost any piece of music, there's some story about that composer's life that you can find out, if not like the actual intention that the composer had for a specific thing that they were trying to communicate. And you realize, okay, they were able to write that as a story, and it's our job to be the storyteller. So that's great. But the only way that they were able to have that opportunity is because they experienced life.
Yeah.
And I do believe that students of music need to experience life so that we have more story to tell and we have more ability to connect with other people's stories as the storyteller.
Nobody was suffering from a dearth of life living when as a music student. But I get what you mean.
Yeah, but truly, some people just get so like holed up in a practice room practicing,
Yeah.
the same stuff over and over again, just trying to polish this stone. And in the meantime, their lens is getting more and more narrow. I think that there's a balance. I'm not saying you can
Uh-huh.
get everything you want in life from just going out and having a great time in life. You do have to do the work, but it is important to be able to get out in the world, experience the beauty of the earth, and experience life, experience the different emotions of life. How can you understand what tragedy is if you've never experienced sadness or joy? And music is written about these things. And so when you've had those experiences, you get to bring more to the music making.
You're talking about becoming a storyteller or becoming a conduit of an experience through the horn to the audience. Where do you go when you're performing music? What's that like for you to be able to tell those stories or transmit those ideas?
In the moment of performing is what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really important to have clarity on what that story is in advance of the performance. I don't think that I've ever had the experience where I was so present in a performance that something occurred to me in that moment as far as like connecting with a story that the music is trying to communicate. I think that usually I have a plan in advance. And honestly, in the moment, I'm not thinking of the story itself, but I think in color and communicating that through sound and color. And that's really what my experience is. I mean, I can only speak to my own experiences.
So you've got a horn in your hand. Let's say you're playing Strauss 2
Mm-hmm.
and you're thinking color or you're thinking
Color
what's going
in
on?
it's character and color. So Strauss 2 is a fantastic example because it's truly my favorite concerto. And I think it's my favorite concerto to teach because I do have such an opinion about what those characters are and how they interact with each other. And it's an opera. It's just a hilarious Disney character filled opera.
Say more.
Yeah. And so I'm not necessarily thinking about that. It allows me to think less about the technique and more about um, the electricity of flirtatiousness or masculinity or just laughter. So I think some of the technical stuff is supposed to sound like laughter, like ditzy girl kind of. Yeah, like, right? And isn't that more
Uh-huh.
fun? And so it's character, it's sound, it's energy. I'm thinking about the interaction of these characters somewhat, but I'm not necessarily thinking in a real detailed storyline in that moment. But I'm really um able to enjoy, you know, bringing to life these characters. And my gosh, anything we can do that gets us away from thinking about technique. Once you've honed the technique in your fundamentals, then we have to play in such a way that it doesn't sound like we're thinking about the technique. This whole thing with storytelling and life and everything, you can't make that transition, which is so necessary, unless you have something you can relate with. You know,
There's the humanity.
like that,
Yeah.
yes, like that silliness of being a flirtatious, you know, Disney princess or whatever. I've been that girl in my life, you know? Yes, I can relate. It's embarrassing, it's silly, but yes, I was a young girl too. And yes, I probably laughed just like that.
And I love your comfort in owning just all the different pieces of personality and life experience that come through because it's a huge swath.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are ugly things in our personalities that um can make our playing if we can channel it into that and connect those things. Somehow it's not ugly anymore. It was important.
Yeah, absolutely. I very much strive to get my what I call the shadow. I strive to have wholesome outlets for my
Yeah.
shadow, for my anger, my grief, whatever it is, jealousy, anything
that comes out, self-loathing and shame, any of that stuff, if I could put it through the horn and turn it into a song, that's way better than getting into an argument or projecting it onto someone or just mentally beating myself up. It doesn't belong there.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's important that we validate all of our emotions, the experiences we've had in our lives. They're not then judged as good or bad or shameful or whatever. Suddenly there's purpose in using that experience for something that's beautiful. We're sharing with other
Yeah.
people something that they might need to hear, and they're going to be allowed to connect with that thing a little bit more. You're giving an opportunity because, you know, much of what we experience in life, others have also experienced. Grief, joy, trauma, you know, for better or worse. We're not alone in many of those things.
I want to touch on something that is an important topic these days in brass playing, which is gender and in particular women in brass. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you could talk a little bit about how you've seen the culture shift
Yeah.
over the last 20, 25 plus years,
Yeah.
mentors like Barbara Butler.
Awesome.
Just the floor
Absolutely.
is yours.
Yeah. I I am so interested in this conversation because I'm female. The orchestral world has traditionally been Caucasian male. And one thing that I noticed, even as a student, I noticed this in most of the large schools that had large, studios. I would say close to, or some places even more than 50% of those students would be female. But the landscape professionally didn't look that way. And I was curious why. There's got to be a reason. The talent is there. Something else is going on with all of what happens with, screening and all of that. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that's a fair process, with the carpet, everything. You can't tell what kind of shoes someone's wearing. I'm just talking about the orchestral audition experience. But still, the percentage professionally, it's been very slow to change. And I'll give you a little more insight. Another Vern Reynolds story that again, these things only come to me in hindsight. And I think about this frequently and realize just how special this was. So when I was a student at Eastman, there were approximately 25 horns, and I would say about 15 of us were female and maybe 10 were male. Vern Reynolds was in his 60s at that time. So he was born in the 20s in rural Kansas, right? This is just, description of a human. And though, regardless of his own life experiences and what he was exposed to in the profession itself, when he would speak to me as a student, every time we did a lot of score studying, and we would be going through first horn parts to Beethoven symphonies or whatnot, and he would say, he would point at some section, and he would say, "Can you sing a little bit of what the first violin has right there?" And I would need to be able to do that. I needed to know the whole score very well. And when he would refer to that violinist, it was always she or her. And when he would refer to, okay, well, in this section right here, your conductor may ask you to blah, 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 or she may ask you to blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of went in one ear and out the other. And it was just normal. That was completely normal. And I think back about that now and I realize how empowering it was and actually unique and intentional. He was making up hypothetical. He built this hypothetical world where I would look and, be interacting with people that were like me. Even if they didn't exist in reality, they were in my hypothetical version. And I'll tell you something. My first 2 orchestra jobs, I was hired by female music directors and they were female concertmasters.
Wow.
And I was
In
not
blind
ever the
auditions.
only, yeah, I was never the only female horn player
Hmm.
in a section. There's some interesting stuff with that. And I just think that there was something very empowering about having somebody speaking into my life in such a way that it wasn't ever inflammatory. It was very just matter of fact, and it built this world that I longed to play in, this orchestra. That's what I wanted to do. And it was entirely possible. I was welcomed. There was nothing unique about me being a woman in that hypothetical world. And it really worked out that way. And I believe that had a lot of the reason, a lot to do with it. Um, I,
Wow.
I, I can only share. I am so, so, so grateful for the many women that were a generation in front of me that really did a lot of the paving of a road that I have enjoyed, a much smoother ride because of their experiences. I, you know, I am so grateful for that. And I think because of that and because of I was in places where I was just meant to be. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can only speak from my own experiences, but I have absolutely for 27 years in all of the places I've worked, I've had incredible relationships with all of the men that I've played with. I have
Hmm.
I have never had an issue where I
Hmm.
felt singled out or, shunned in some way um, for it during in any of my jobs.
Of other people's experience has been different, but it's
For
very
sure.
refreshing to hear that you've had a
It is.
solid,
It
experience of
is.
respect.
It's too I feel I feel conflicted about it because I don't want to tell my experiences and have that sound like in any way I would be diminishing someone
Correct.
else's experiences because
Hmm.
I believe my experiences are entirely unique to me and they are true to me. But that doesn't mean that other people's experiences that have been otherwise aren't entirely true to them as well. And I validate that they are both entirely true.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's tricky. It's tricky. I can't speak something that isn't true to me, but I don't want to ever suggest that, somebody else's truth that's different from mine is less true.
That's a huge rabbit hole that I don't want to go into about reality creation and beliefs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do want to get your opinion about the conversation around inclusion and, shall we say, explicit or efforts, explicit efforts to include and represent females and other perhaps marginalized populations in brass when it comes to ensembles, panels, um, get, guests at
Mm.
workshops and things like that. What are your thoughts on making those efforts?
It's important for us to always recognize where we can do better, in
Hmm.
anything in life. And I believe in striving to live my life. I can tell you I strive to live my life in this way. I'm sure I fall short all of the time, over and over again, but my intention in life is to enter situations thinking about ways that I might be able to add value to the people I interact with. It's not just take it for myself, but thinking about how I can add value for other people's life in that moment. And I do believe that our world has become so individually focused that there's not enough of that. And when you open your eyes and you look around you and you can say, it takes a lot of security. You have to have you have to feel pretty secure about yourself to go into situations and think, well, I don't need to blow myself up here. What can I do for the people that I'm seeing to help them? And um, I think that that's something that's missing right now. And maybe that's something that's been missing for a long time. Maybe this recognition that things are off is somehow more people noticing that they can do something as well, for other people. If we want to improve diversity, if we want there to be more inclusivity at the professional level, we have to look at education. We have to look at opportunities that people are given in the education, that and exposure. And what can we do at that level so that when we're looking at changing things at the professional level, we're not compromising quality ever. We are actually going to fix this gap permanently. Because I think that the idea, a lot of ideas, though they are wonderful, they are quick fixes, can be just band-aids on problems.
Yeah.
I would really like to see this issue fixed permanently. And I think we have to start at the beginning. We have to look at the beginning of the story and say, where can we do better, and focus our efforts there.
If you could be a little bit more specific about that root cause or root solution.
As a woman, I've noticed women are in the schools. The talent is there, the numbers are there, but they're not transferring into the professional world. There's got to be a reason. And women, I think, go down this road and maybe they're making choices, or they think they have to make certain choices that, pull them away from pursuing what they intended originally. And I like to be really open about my life because, sharing my own experiences. I'm a mother. I've had babies. I've been pregnant while playing. I've done fertility treatments. I'm married. I've moved around a lot. I've had many years of long distance marriage, and, like, being able to share my story and people can say, wow, and you did it. And it's like, I feel like, gosh, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I think there needs to be more of that. So people have something to say, okay, it is possible. I can do it all. It might be messy sometimes, but it all is possible. And
That sounds like your billboard, the billboard takeaway from this episode.
it might be messy, but it all still is possible. Yeah, that's good. Like I said, I can only speak to the one small sliver of that diversity conversation, and that's just being a woman. But
Yeah.
I think that the same idea holds true for anybody. You need to be able to see yourself. You need to be able to see that it is possible. And so, what made it possible for me? I had support, I had exposure. I was able to see this dream. I got the education. And I was never told I couldn't or I shouldn't or that there wasn't going to be a place for me. Um, and honestly, I mean, in many ways, I might have just lucked out. I, I, I don't think I earned that, right? I think it just worked out that way for me. And sadly, the opposite is true for many people. That's my experience. I don't know if that's really the answer to your question about what we can do, but I think having an awareness that there is room to improve and looking for ways that we can intentionally show opportunities, give education, and support people in ways that they can see themselves achieving what they want. That's how we change that.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. That's really cool. I love that story about Vern Reynolds. It absolutely has my gears
Yeah.
turning.
It really is something. The other thing you mentioned Barbara Butler. I I remember very clearly being an undergrad and seeing her performing with the Eastman Brass pregnant, and then she had a baby, and it was like, oh yeah, sure, great, of course. And it was like it seemed very heroic that she was playing the trumpet while doing all of that, but at the same time it seemed like, oh well, see it's possible. See, you know, that happens. That's what you do. And I studied with Leslie Norton. She's principal horn at the Nashville Symphony. When I was after my freshman year in college, I went to the Easter Music Festival, and she was teaching there then. And towards the end of the festival or later, she was the one person she wanted to talk about what it was like for her having played her horn pregnant. And I don't think she would have that conversation with a male student because it wouldn't apply. But it was, it never seemed weird to me. I was intrigued, and I thought it was a really cool conversation. And I remembered it, and it just made me think, oh yeah, see, people can do these things and have this career that I really dreamed of having.
Made it feel really possible for you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember reading an article in I don't remember if it was the International Musician or the Horn Call, but they interviewed Gail Williams, and she talked about her baby's dancing in her belly, like
Yeah.
responding to the music. And I just thought that's so cool. Like being open, saying, we've had these experiences allowed me to feel that I didn't need to make choices otherwise. And so that was really helpful for me, very empowering. And I too have had a full life and career. And so, like, I'm not cagey about anything. I'm a really open book because anything I've experienced, it might, talking about it, it might be able to help somebody.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, and as well about your performance, inspiration, and pedagogical views. We've got time for a few rapid fire
Okay.
questions before we complete this podcast. So, number one, what's your favorite Mahler symphony to play and why?
7. It's rarely done, and I just love it.
Fair enough. What's on your playlist right now? What kind of music
My
are you listening to?
playlist. Okay, honestly, John Denver. We listen to a lot of John Denver, and anything that my kids are playing. I have 2 middle school daughters, so I don't even know who that music's by, but that's the soundtrack of my daily life. Is I'm not making the choices.
Yeah, facts. If you could have a dream come true non-classical collaboration, what would it be? Everything's taken care of.
A non-classical, it does it have to be musical?
Let's say musical.
Okay, a collaboration, non-classical. Harry Connick Jr. Because he tap dances and I tap dance too. And I think it would be
Oh,
really
that'd
fun,
be so cool. That
right?
would be so cool.
Yeah,
I did a whole 100 days of dancing and playing French horn videos on Instagram. That
that's
was
awesome.
rough. That was a rough learning.
That's incredible. That
Yeah.
is incredible. I mean, I haven't tap danced in years. I took some lessons when I first moved to Cincinnati because I wanted to get into it again. But yeah, I think that'd be super fun.
If horn didn't exist, what instrument would you play?
Oh, what instrument would I play? The cello. It's that sound, that timbre. It's what draws me. It's it's those are the colors I paint with.
What's one lesson that you hope all your students carry for life?
Um, I hope that I lead by example and I allow them to feel safe enough um to just know that wanting the best in other people is a good thing. Um, like the way you treat others in all situations, um, that it's not just about you, that it's what you can bring to others' experiences. It makes you better. As a musician, it makes you better. I mean, if you share your music in this way, you're a better musician, right? You're in an orchestra. It's like, okay, how can what I play, how can that impact the way that others are playing around me in a positive way? And if you can even consider that when you're placing an order at a restaurant, this interaction improve? How can my what I'm bringing in this moment improve this person's life, improve the situation of this opportunity? So, I mean, it makes us better people, it makes us better musicians, and to thinking beyond what we're getting out of this life, and instead of thinking what we're giving.
Mm, yeah, it's so beautiful. If that was the dominant process in society as a whole, the world might look
It would
quite
look better.
different.
And
Yeah.
I have loads of ways to improve myself in that, but to have that as the aspiration, that's the goal.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this and all of yourself in the podcast. If folks want to follow you, learn more about you, where can they best find you or get in touch?
Really through email. My new email at Rice University is Horn Shepherd. So capital H, capital S, Horn Shepherd at rice.edu.
Do you do occasionally privates for folks that aren't enrolled at Rice? Is that something that you offer
Absolutely.
or?
Yeah, yeah, I do frequently actually. So, um, yeah, people can get in touch with me. I love teaching. I love connecting with people and encouraging and sharing through the horn, sharing great music.
Excellent. Thank you so much again for coming on the podcast.
Truly my pleasure.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast. This episode is brought to you by High Range Magic, my online program that helps horn players liberate their high range as well as reach new levels of relaxation and ease throughout the full range of the horn, and also to kind of reclaim a beautiful new paradigm of relationship and mindset with the instrument. If that sounds interesting to you, head over to highrangemagic.com and you can register to watch the free masterclass I have, How to Confidently Enjoy a 4+ Octave Range Without Pain, Overthinking, or Constantly Practicing. That's over at highrangemagic.com. Thanks again.